It seems like there's this new maliciousness almost, where in this case they gave the purse, they gave what the robbers wanted, and they were still shot. How insane is that?
We've seen a brazenness in criminals that we haven't seen before. I think it's a couple of things. I think it's criminals no longer fear being arrested because they know in the criminal justice system there aren't going to be outcomes that put them in jail. Just Friday, before all of this happened, I tweeted about an individual that we arrested earlier this year for unlawful use of a weapon, a felony, who went before a judge, pled guilty, and the judge kind of shook his finger at him and said, okay, I don't want you to own another gun. What happened just a couple months later? We arrested him for an armed robbery with a gun. So the latest data for the last quarter from the court system, almost 2/3 of the cases for possessing a gun have ended in probation. I don't know how many times I have to say it. I don't know how many times the mayor has to say it, the prosecutor, professors. The criminal justice system in St. Louis is not a deterrent for crime because criminals know they continually get probation and go out on the street and reoffend.
But if the judges aren't going to step up, I mean, what do you say to this man's mother who is looking at him being paralyzed for the rest of his life? What can be done if the judges aren't going to step up?
Well, I think in the judges we have an opportunity because every judge in the city of St. Louis is up for retention. And we have to start looking at the records of those judges and then identify the ones that are giving us outcomes that keep us safe.
So you're going to call them out?
I think we absolutely have to. I called out Judge Neal earlier in the month for a case. I tweeted, and there was a case in CaseNet from Judge Omer. I think we have to continually have these conversations. I get being a judge is a difficult job where you have to balance. We're not talking about guilt and innocence. We're talking about people that have pled guilty or been found guilty by trial. And when they're found guilty or plead guilty, there has to be a consequence. Probation is not a consequence that keeps us safe.
Is there any kind of a trend or a pattern here? Obviously, this is not the first one we've heard about in the past few days where someone did what the thief was asking them to do and then they got shot anyway. Is this happening more often? Do we know why it might be happening? What's the mindset?
I think there's a brazenness that we talked about just a minute ago. So this morning I talked to the FBI, the Mission Save Task Force, Strike Against Violence Early, to make this a priority, to go back and look at robberies that have happened over the last month or so to see if there are patterns. So it's a priority with the FBI task force. It's a priority with our detectives to see if we can identify that. In this particular case, where the gentleman was shot and is paralyzed, there were no video cameras in the area to catch anything. We have a good description, but it's somewhat generic. African-American male, 5'2", 5'3", stocky build with long dreadlocks. So that's really where we're starting from. That's what we have to go on. But we're going back and looking at other cases to see if there are similarities, if we can piece something together. But it shows a callousness, a brazenness that we haven't seen before.
Were there other people around besides the people involved in the robbery?
It was just there were people moving around, but these two individuals were targeted. The car pulled up. The suspect got out of the car very quickly, announced the robbery. After the items were taken from the female, they turned around to run, and the bad guy shot them. We can't. It's unacceptable. We have to make sure we find out who this person is. We have to make sure we put him in front of a judge, and we have to make sure that the judge puts this person in jail for a very long time.
Is there any kind of advice you could give to people? I think people have long thought, all right, at least if I cooperate with the criminal, give them what they want, I'll be okay. That doesn't seem to be the case.
Well, I think be smart. So park in a well-lit lot. Don't walk in ones and twos. Walk in large groups. Know where your car is. And going into the baseball playoffs, you're going to see additional officers downtown. We're increasing our uniform presence downtown. We do it every October, but this year we're going to do it with a purpose to make sure that we don't see a repeat of this type of violence.
Do you think that the stadium has become a particular target?
No, I think wherever there are people. So where people are, criminals come. If there are no people, there are no people to prey on. That's why we know visibility, hotspot policing, going to those areas where we've seen crimes, targeting individuals, hot people. We're going to continue our strategies because we always have to, any crime is too much, one crime is too many, but we've really been progressing. In the last 10 years, crime is down almost 50% in the city of St. Louis. I want to get rid of that other 50%, but we're moving in the right direction, and we're going to continue doing the things that we know reduce crime.
You've said in the past that generally, if you're not in a gang or selling drugs, you generally don't have anything to worry about. Has that changed? Should people be generally afraid of being randomly targeted?
I think people have to be smart. And so I think there's a chance that crimes occur, whether you're in St. Louis, in Chicago, in Washington, D.C., of being victimized. But if you're smart about it, your chances are significantly reduced. I don't see this as changing that at all.
Is there anything being, I'm sorry, Michael. Is there anything being done in other cities? I know that everybody's having the same problem. Is there anything innovative being done in other cities that maybe could be brought here?
So a couple of things. So the first one is the NOVA project, the No Violence Alliance, which is being tried in Kansas City to focus on violence. We are bringing some of those ideas here. In August, the mayor and I sat with chiefs and prosecutors from Washington, D.C., from New York City, from Atlanta, from a variety of cities around the country that are experiencing the same thing. And next week, we're going to be sitting with the Attorney General talking about what can be done to focus on these crimes. So there are many cities that are seeing increases in violence. The availability of guns, high-capacity magazines and assault rifles, the number of shell casings that are left at a scene, where it used to be 1 or 2 or 3, now is 10 and 20 and 30. The willingness of people to use guns to solve conflict at unprecedented levels. It used to be you just go behind the school and have a fist fight. Now we see each other, we taunt each other on social media, we taunt each other on Facebook, and then we meet with our guns and we start shooting each other. And
that wasn't the case in this situation. It was fans leaving a Cardinals game.
To his question about what are being done in other cities and what's going on in other cities. So absolutely right, not this, but to Paul's question, that's exactly what we're seeing not only in St. Louis but in other cities around the country.
That's the Missouri Attorney General, I assume you were talking about.
No, the U.S. Attorney.
The U.S. Attorney?
Yeah.
U.S. Attorney or U.S. Attorney General?
The new Attorney General for the United States of America.
Okay.
We're meeting with her next week
Here or?
in Washington, D.C.
Chief, before we jump to the mayor, I'm just listening. I want to ask you, I heard you blaming the times that we live in and the availability of guns and the judges, but what about Sam Dotson? I mean, when you look at this and say, what the hell happened? Somebody got shot, they could be paralyzed for life, going to the ball game with their mother. Where were your officers at that time? Did you have enough officers downtown when this happened?
Well, you've heard the mayor and I talk about asking for 160 additional officers.
I mean, we hear that all the time. On the night of the shooting, how many officers, do you know the facts, how many officers were downtown? Was it adequate coverage?
There was a crime that occurred. So this is what a chief struggles with and worries about all the time. I never want anybody in our city to be victimized. So the officers that are assigned to the district were there. Our supplemental patrol, the dozen additional officers that we put out on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday night were downtown. It's impossible to put a police officer on every corner. There were officers that were working secondary at the ball game. There were additional officers managing traffic. There was the supplemental patrol of a dozen officers. So there were officers downtown, but an officer on every corner is not something that we can achieve.
Well, what about the past emphasis when we had just car cloudings? You said we got to get these lot owners to hire secondary cops, to hire security guards. Was there anybody at this lot where there were the mug nearby? Are they upholding their end of keeping downtown safe?
So I think it's an effort that everybody has to work on. You've heard me talk about the lot owners and making sure, but they're focused on their lots and the break-ins there. You've heard me talk about video cameras and technology. There were no video cameras in this area. We've canvassed the area twice looking for maybe some camera that might have caught a description of the car. So I think everybody was doing as much as they can. In some cases, we still need to do more.
Do you take any blame for this, or are you going to do anything differently so it does not happen again?
So you heard me talk about we are going to, as we go into playoff baseball, you're going to see additional officers downtown. October is always a busy time downtown because the Cardinals, more times than not, are in the playoffs. You're going to see additional officers starting, if there is a wild card game, next Wednesday in around the ballpark, in around downtown.
What can you say to people, and this is probably a good question for the mayor as well, but since you've got the microphone on, I'll hit you with it first. What can you say to the person sitting out in the suburbs who, occasionally likes to come downtown, who's just terrified now when they see these kinds of things just beyond the pale, but they're just going to stay home? What can you say to them?
So what I think we have to say is that downtown is safe, that there are police officers downtown. Random acts of violence happen in St. Louis, they happen in Chicago, they happen in New York, they happen all over the country. We need to make sure that we do everything that we can. So the police department is stepping up. The mayor has made available unlimited overtime for us to make sure we have as many officers as we can. But the whole thing, the police officers are just one piece of the criminal justice system. So you've heard us talk about, and I feel like I'm telling you that water is wet when we talk about the judges. But when 2/3 of the time that people that we arrest get probation, and the recidivism rate for that group is as high as 70%, so 7 out of 10 reoffend. If you're a police officer, don't you think it becomes frustrating when you continually arrest the same people over and over and over again? So if we didn't have to do that, there would be more officers to ride parking lots downtown, to be visible around a baseball game. Those are the things that we have to focus on. You notice the mayor and I are sitting here talking to you. The judges aren't sitting here talking to you, telling you about what their sentencing guidelines are and why they're letting more people out on probation than they're putting in jail.
Just manage your time. You only have a couple minutes left.
Just one other quick thing then. We haven't had a chance to talk to you since last week when, before the Public Safety Committee, your consultant, Dr. Roosevelt, suggested perhaps using some firefighters as additional manpower, perhaps in these very kinds of situations, just extra eyes and ears out there on the street. What do you think of that?
I think the right idea is to hire the 160 new officers that we've been talking about. Firefighters are trained to be firefighters. Police officers are trained to be police officers. I think that was a great idea that the federal government had about making mailmen be the eyes and ears of Homeland Safety. That's not their job. Firefighters keep people safe. They respond to fires. Police officers keep people safe. They respond to crimes. Let's hire the number of police officers that we need.
You upset that the Board of Aldermen hasn't taken any action to hire more police? I mean, does that infuriate you?
Oh, absolutely it does, because, again, when we talk about crime and they want to talk about a comprehensive strategy, we have hotspot policing, focused deterrence, hot people policing, but we need more officers. And that seems to fall on deaf ears there. We have to have more police officers. When I joined the department 20 years ago, almost 1,600 police officers. Now we have about 1,300. It was great as crime has been going down. We're making cuts all through city government. I understand it. But now if crime's going to go up, we have to be nimble enough to be able to make the focus on public safety and add police officers quickly.
All right, Mr. Mayor, you fought long and hard to get local control of this police department, and look what's happening. We've got somebody going to a Cardinal game, and they're getting shot, maybe paralyzed for life. Are you happy with the police department under local control?
The police department is doing an outstanding job. They're doing their job. They're making arrests. And they are, if you're blaming the police on the crime, then you got it backwards. They're out there every day.
Wait a minute, what about the idea that when you come downtown, it's the holy of holies, it's the economic engine of the region, and you yourself have argued we need these football stadiums, we need these stadiums. You can't go to a stadium with your mother for her birthday without getting shot down.
You're suggesting that it's the police's fault.
Shouldn't they have been there? Shouldn't they have beefed up?
The police were out on the street. They were within 2 blocks of this particular incident. We cannot have a police officer on every block at every time on every day. And what they did is they're doing their job. They are arresting people. They are putting them in the system. But it's not just about the police. They're doing their job, and I've also authorized unlimited overtime. We're also working on trying to get resources for more police to help support the work that they're doing, because they need more police. They're working overtime. They're working hard, and the frustrating part is that once they make the arrests, they put them in the system, and they're right back out on the street.
So blame the judges. What about the chief? Does Chief Sam Dotson still have your full confidence?
We have one of the very best chiefs in the United States of America. I know that for a fact. He is a professional. He knows his job. He works in partnership with the University of Missouri St. Louis and with other chiefs throughout the country to find the best practices to do the job. What I'm telling you is our police are doing the job. They need help. They need more personnel. And one of the reasons why I authorized more overtime, unlimited overtime, plus we're trying to get them resources to add more police officers to help them with what they're doing. But remember, police are the last resort. And let me put it in this context. Crime has gone down in the city of St. Louis about in half over the last 10 years overall. We have seen a recent uptick, particularly on violent crime. That's something that's going on in cities all across America. And I've talked to chiefs from around the country, prosecutors as well, and nobody can really pinpoint their finger on exactly what's going on and why. But I will tell you this.
Officers are reticent to make an arrest. They're a little bit timid. Do you think the officers are aggressive enough in protecting
They are doing their jobs. They're making more arrests. They're putting people in the system. We need to make sure that people that are committing violent acts against innocent victims stay there. Now, this is what frustrates me. In fact, I'm beyond frustrated. I'm angry with the type of violence we're seeing, the boldness we're seeing in some of these criminals now that we haven't witnessed to this extent in a long, long time. And we're seeing cities all across America experiencing that. That's why we're going to be. That's why we were in Washington D.C. a couple of months ago, and that's why we're going to go back to Washington D.C. to talk with the Attorney General about some issues and try to get some help, more help from the federal government. We are getting some more. Looks like some cops money. Not enough, I don't think. But let me also put this in better perspective. We have seen a tremendous drop in crime now over the past 10 years in the city of St. Louis. And we are doing all the same things we were doing before. We're doing more. We're even doing better in terms of providing programs and opportunities to try to help make sure people don't live a life of crime, whether it's reentry programs, whether it's education, job training, a lot of other things we're working on, and yet we're still seeing the numbers go up. So it's very, very frustrating.
Right, well,
so having
question.
said that,
You're
so
making speeches. Hold
no,
on.
but having said that,
what
but let me
about the
finish.
idea of downtown? You have bodyguards all the time. When was the last time, do you think it would help if you were to walk from a Cardinal game to a parking spot to get a feel for, does downtown feel safe in your skin when you don't have a bodyguard with you?
Yes, it does. I've worked in downtown for.
I mean, when's the last time you walked around downtown without police protection?
I do it.
At night, after a Cardinal game?
I have.
Kevin, this is ridiculous.
Kevin, this is ridiculous. Here's what I've done. I have worked in downtown for 45 years.
I'm just getting at, do you think you're in touch? Is that what I'm getting at?
Absolutely. I've worked in I live in the city. My family's in the city. I am the mayor of the city. I walk a lot around a lot of places in our city by myself. I don't have security with me at all time. When I'm on my personal time, I don't have security. And I do have one person with me when I am using it for business. But I've worked downtown for 45 years. I worked downtown in the 90s when violent crime was double what it is now in the city of St. Louis. So no, I am well in tuned. And personally, first, I take a very personal interest in this, of course. My family lives in the city of St. Louis. I am the mayor of the city of St. Louis. I take personal responsibility for virtually every issue that comes up that is important to the people I represent. And this is one of the most important ones. And this is what I will tell you. We need help. The police department needs help. We need more police officers. I've got a board bill before the Board of Aldermen that would help us add more police officers to the city of St. Louis, and we need the Board of Aldermen to pass it. We have talked about having a gun court so that somebody gets arrested with a gun in the city of St. Louis, they get real consequences, not a slap on the hand and get put back on the street. We're working with the state to try to find out if we can do something so that the city of St. Louis can be treated differently than outstate Missouri. We have our own issues, and Kansas City has its own issues. Inner cities with guns, with neighborhoods that are just swarming with guns, we have a different challenge than what they do in the outstate. So what we'd like to do is get our own authority to enact common sense gun laws that keeps guns out of violent criminals, guns from the hands of violent criminals, and also protects Second Amendment rights for those who are responsible. So, there's nobody that's more frustrated than I am. In fact, as I said, I'm more than frustrated. It angers me. Nothing weighs on me more than this. We spend more time, more effort, more money, and not only enforcing the law, which is the last resort, but also trying to do everything we can to make St. Louis a better place for where we can have more opportunities for more people so they don't have to choose a life of crime and they can choose a life that will help them support their family. So I will tell you this right now, we are not done here, okay? We are going to be tireless in our efforts to get more cops, tireless in our efforts to get real consequences for people that use guns against people, victims in our city. And we're going to work hard as well to make sure that we at least have a say, the people of St. Louis have a say on what the gun laws should be in the city of St. Louis.
Well said. Thank you, Mayor.
My pleasure.